Now, obviously, all three of you have incredibly inspiring and impressive backgrounds. I've been reading up on you, and you're involved in some amazing initiatives that have a tangible impact on a global level. So, Jonah, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, the initiatives that you are involved in to drive progress and change in building just and equal societies for all.
Yeah, so thank you. I will just quickly give you a context. Um, so like Ariza too, I had this I grew up in this intersection of two religions. So as a Christian growing up, among Muslim families, so it was an opportunity for me to get myself ingrained in the values of both religions. So I would still find, time to still practice what I believed in. But of course, I would also take into consideration, the environment where I found myself, growing up, among, in a Muslim family, trying to also learn the value system of Islam. And of course, with the value system that I've also learned over time from my own religion, Christianity. So I also found myself, in this intersection. And so what I've been able to do is to marry both, to be able to find common grounds. Of course, growing up, I saw examples of how, the same intersection that I experienced growing up, how it can be used, how it can be weaponized to, to deformat or to really reformat young people's mind, to to tell them things, show them things that they are not supposed to even be showed, to be shown, to tell them things that are not correct, tell them things that are, that will further reinforce their inherent biases, to tell them things that will further really bring out, so those biases that ideally should not have, manifested. So I saw how this was weaponized, and of course, when we set up, Tolerance Academy, our key objective was to disabuse people's mindset, was to bring young people together and then disabuse their minds, and of course take them through, a journey, while reflecting on their past, and then of course whatever, based on the reflection of their past, to bring learning from there, and then to bear on the morals of the moment and how they can then begin to live a new life, based on whatever learning, they are picking up from the engagement. So we typically just bring people together to interact, to share the biases, to lay bare whatever notions, prejudice they've had for years, for those things to be distilled, to be discussed, sometimes to be corrected, sometimes to be reframed, or sometimes to be reformatted. And of course, there was this example of a student imam who came to the academy, and of course, a Christian student who also came to the academy, after the whole journey of taking them through their past reflection of, and of course what they have done with their past life, and what we want them to start doing, from now on, and of course what the strategy will be for them. So after going through this journey, we heard amazing testimonies from one of those guys who told us that before then, he had very, very scary notion about Islam, and how Islam was intolerant, how if you are very close to a Muslim guy, your life is not safe, So he had these very wrong notions for years, and that notion was disabused in that academy. So we've had these experiences of people, so many of them spread around the world now. I hope they are still living up to that standard. I hope they are still spreading the message, because of course, the way I see anti-racism, it goes beyond governmental institutions. It goes beyond international development organizations trying to bring interventions to local government. It's also about individual. It's also about how we choose to live our lives. It's also about our individual value system. It's also about how we engage in healthy competition to get ourselves a slot at the table. So for me, it's about individual. It's about how the example you show. It's about the cues people get from you. So so that's the summary for now.
Thank you, Jonah. And as a neuroscientist, this is music to my ears because it's very practical. Practical. It's focused on mindset and behavior. So that's the way to really have an impact. Thanks. So Mike, I've been reading up on you as well, of course, and I couldn't even fit everything that you do into your bio, into the introduction, because it's just too much. So could you tell us just a little bit about what you're doing with your initiatives as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's very kind of you, Marcia. I think what I'll probably focus on is the Common Sense Network, which actually has links with what the last speaker just spoke about. One of the major things we do is the Common Sense Network is an alternative news network. And so we create spaces for people who don't have the same opinions to come together and learn from each other. And I know people have probably been triggered right now, like, oh, why would you do such a thing? Because that's how I think society moves forward, is when we create and make it normal to talk to people you disagree with, right? To learn to disagree without being disagreeable. And so, these spaces we talk about online, it means a news network, it means, audiovisual programming, content, series. But offline, it means workshops, upskilling young people. And actually, since we're on such a prestigious stage, we're actually about to launch a new venture, which is Common Sense Plus, because we realized that we've got to help brands do the same thing. Because, it is important to focus on the kind of individual level and what people can do in a kind of a myopic level. But also, large institutions have a lot of stake in the world. And in fact, the distorted nature of the mainstream media, you can actually lay the blame directly at a lot of these big brands' feet and say, hey, news networks, why is it that you profit off division and dividing us? So with Common Sense Plus, a new research and marketing agency, we want to help brands, come together, build powerful coalitions, make democracy stronger by devising winning campaigns. We can complain about the issue, and I think a lot of us, know how it feels to be, racially profiled. I can talk to you about stats about, regarding stop and search in Manchester and how Black people are subject to more stop and search than white. 5 times more likely they are to be stopped and searched. At a young age, I just decided that, something must be done about it, and so let's start this organization. Let's get started. And that's what we're doing now. And I just hope the young people listening realize too that, hey, I don't want to jump ahead of the conversation, but you can get involved too. You can start things. You can make a dent in the world. If something annoys you, don't just complain about it. Get out and do something about it.
Yeah, that's some really solid advice there. And also, you heard it here first, Common Sense Plus, it's coming. So, Ariza, I want to ask you something because, are there any resources that you can share, books, movies, documentaries, or blogs that have inspired you to speak up against racism in your own lives that might inspire others to do the same?
Thank you for that. I'm a huge fan of movies. I think anything emotional that really pulls at the heartstrings of people is a great tool to really get them not just to understand and to empathize with people who experience racism, but to actually really wear the shoes of that person. And I remember literally the movie that I cried to the most was Fruitvale Station, which is basically the story of an African American man who was beaten up in a very tragic situation because of an altercation with the police in Metro Station. And it got me thinking now actually to an incident which just happened last week of a 67-year-old woman of Filipino and Asian American descent who was beat up and received at least 125 blows by a local in New York, and she sustained so many injuries. And it's just it's one manifestation of how there's a big rise in anti-Asian sentiments, especially in the US. I was just reading statistics of how anti-Asian hate crimes surged by 170% in just 2 years from 2020 in the US, and how 3 in 4 Asian American or Pacific Islander women in the US actually claim to have experienced racism and even sexual harassment. So this intersectionality that we're talking about, it happens as well. It's not just an issue of race and religion, it's also of race and gender. So I really recommend things like movies, Fruitvale Station, music, some of which we've heard today, stories really told by actual people. It's nice to say these numbers. It's nice to say this data. It's nice to say that fancy big words that honestly not all people understand. We really have to get down to telling brilliant stories that stick with people and that really make it hard to forget these stories of racism, these experiences of racism that affect so many of us. If we could communicate in 60 seconds something that one person will carry with them for the rest of their lives, the way I was affected by Fruitvale Station, then let's do that. And hopefully things like today, the event that we're having today, is one step towards that, to really shake you and tell you, hey, this is a big problem for so many people, and we need you to act. We need you to act now.
Yeah. Again, as a neuroscientist, you're making me happy because empathy is a really important stimulator for behavioral change. So I fully agree with you. Everybody go check out that movie because it was very passionate the way you spoke about it. Thanks.